Morning, everybody. Hi again, Ronan Powell here. I just want to carry on a little bit from yesterday's topic about high performance. I realize there's a lot more to it than I said yesterday, and so I'm going to try and keep this really quick and link it to nature and also for the long term. So I've seen this with so many clients where they deplete themselves, especially when they're going to another level. And it's usually because of the sheer effort that's required. But when the time comes to make a real big effort for something, that's when you need fuel in the tank the most. Unfortunately for most people, when they make a huge effort to go next level, they're already fair way to depletion energy-wise when they actually go to make that big effort. So yesterday I talked about I talked about warm-up, high performance, and rest. Have a look at the video if you haven't already. Quick summary. If when you're warming up, only warm up. When you're high performing, only high performing. When you're resting, only be resting. If you want to have longevity in terms of inspiration, abilities, and all that. If you're so the key to high performance was actually the quality of the rest. So muscle builds when it's resting. Amino acids they build so when they're resting. So when you're working out, when you're going hard at something, there's destruction going on in the muscles. It's not a bad thing. It's just the protein cells break down. That's what happens when you put things under pressure, and then when you rest, they rebuild, but they rebuild better. That, by the way, is nature at work. And that actually affects all of us. You know, in order to grow, you got to have that challenge, and you feel like there's a kind of a destruction going on as you move through it, but then there's a growth at the other side of it if it's done right. So what do I mean by working with nature and not against? It's partially that, but actually partially long term. So if you look at the long term in anything, nature triumphs always. I mean, nature is just doing its thing, right? And there's a lot to learn from it, and we all feel better when we're in nature. And you know, if you spend time in it long enough, you come back into your center or your equilibrium if you've been tired for a while. So I want to talk about this long term, and I'm going to use, I suppose it's my own model for why yuppie flu happens to people, or you know, adrenal burnout, and you know, all these words, labels that they have for it. So basically, it's where let's think about, let's say there's high performance warm up and rest, and the key is that when you're doing one, you're not doing the other two. That's the more you can make it happen that way, and the more effective you're going to be in the long term. So let's just imagine, let's say there's a pie and we want to divide it into three. So there's high performance warm up and rest. So let's imagine, you know, some people want to sleep 8 hours a day. That's about a third of the day. So let's just use 50%, right? So let's say 50% of all your time in your life is rest, okay? And let's say 25% is warm up and 25% is high performance. So what we're saying is half of, let's say your life is rest, and a quarter of it's high performance, and a quarter of it's warm up. So keeping with round numbers, keeping it fairly simple, I hope. Let's say you've got a 10-year period. So in a 10-year period, in terms of nature is a great leveler, right? You know, we're born and we die and all that kind of stuff. That's the ultimate leveler, really. So the more we align with nature as we go through life, the better we're going to be energetically, and the more we're going to have abilities and all those kinds of things. So let's take a 10-year period. If someone aligns with nature quite well over a 10-year period, they're going to probably be feeling fantastic after 10 years. But if somebody is, let's say, overdoing any area in life, it'll catch up to some degree. I've had a few injuries over the years from sports and various things, and it's usually if I push myself too hard, or if I haven't warmed up properly or something like that. So if we look at 10-year period and we think, okay, so over that 10-year period, there should be just based on this simple framework, there should be approximately 5 years rest that have happened, and approximately 2.5 years of high performance, and approximately 2.5 years of warm up. Now, I'm not saying that's gospel or anything. That's just numbers to make this analogy real. So let's say if somebody over a 5-year period has been really high performing, going full throttle for 5 years, and maybe in that 5-year period they've just gotten by on. And I know everybody needs different amounts of sleep. You know, I don't need a heck of a lot. Some people need twice as much. Sometimes I need more. So I'm just using 50% as a number. So some people need less sleep, but they might want to rest more when they're awake, etc. So let's just say over 5 years then, if 50% rest would be about 2.5 years rest, and the other 2.5 years would be divided up between warm-up and high performance. But let's say this person has really been, you know, going hard for a few years, you know, working 16-hour days, but in something they don't like, stopped doing their health and fitness stuff. Maybe they're not warming up properly or warming down, or, you know, debriefing properly, etc. So maybe that 5 years for them looks like they've done 4 years high performance, or maybe 3 years high performance, let's say, and let's say they've done a year rest and a year warm up. Okay, so what's happened there is, if they've done 3 years high performance over a 5-year period, well, what we're saying here is with the numbers is that over a 10-year period, you want to do 2.5 years high performance. So in that 5-year period, they have done way more high performance than they're capable of doing. So in 5 years, they've done more high performance than they would normally be capable of doing in 10. And it sounds great at the time, but this is what happens. This is where nature catches up. So nature eventually goes, hey, I got to rest, you know? Or maybe some of the high performance produces short-term results. This is a classic get-rich-quick nonsense, right? And so there's no longevity to it, and so something collapses and people get stressed or whatever. So over that 5-year period, the person has done more than their 10-year share of high performance. And so the body says, well, you know, over this kind of period, over 10 years, I need 2.5 years rest and 2.5 years warm up. Maybe they've had 1 year rest and 1 year, or 1.5 years rest, 1.5 years high performance, and so the body says, I need a rest, you know? So nature kicks in, and nature says, no, I've got to have my 2.5 years rest over this 10-year period. And so people, the body just says, I need to rest. And they might need to rest for 6 months or 2 years or 2.5 years, and you get adrenal burnout, you get yuppie flu. I don't know how many other terms there are for it, but this is the reason it happens. The other thing is, for people to push through, they often use, so the adrenals, right? So the adrenal gland is important for your energy over the long term. So people have a synthetic adrenal gland, and like they might drink 8 cups of coffee every day. And so instead of the adrenals regulating the system, you have coffee regulating the system. And so the coffee takes over from the adrenals, and then the adrenals don't really do the job as well as they used to, because they're being kind of, you're overriding them. But in terms of nature wins out at the end of the day. So the wisdom, I think, is just in listening to your body, listening to yourself, trusting yourself. And that's really what it's all about. It's all about trusting yourself. So the point of this is to think in terms of the yin and the yang. If there's a lot of plus, then there's, you know, if there's a lot of, you know, full-on action, there's got to be a lot of rest at some point. And the longer there's full-on action, then the longer the rest is going to be the longer the rest you will need. I mean, even if you look at special forces, they're full on for a few years, but they don't, it's not a long career, because they're so intensive in their work. So always think about the plus and the minus. Like if you're looking at one side, actually flip it and go, what can I do on the other? If I'm looking to high perform, look at the other side, go, what can I do on the rest side of things? And if you feel like you're over resting, well then go, hey, maybe it's time to high perform. It might be time to do something. You know, memory is a great example. I'm not going to go into this too much because it's kind of off topic for what I'm talking about, but memory is just a good example. When people say, my memory's gone, I'm getting old, I can't remember things. So that's recalling. They can't recall. But again, what's the other side of that? So recalling is a recording. Recalling is a playback. But to play back something, it must have been recorded. Okay, so when people have a problem with memory, one of the things I often look at is, well, has a recording going. So if people are stressed or not present or not interested, they're not recording what's being said. They're not interested, so it's just going straight past them. So even with memory, I want to use that as an everyday example we can all relate to. Even with memory, there is a record and there is a playback. So think about that in I suppose yin yang, plus minus, day and night, good, bad, all that kind of stuff. And then I think anytime any of us are thinking that way, we have a more complete picture, and we're closer to the reality of something. And so that's the piece on high performance. Flip it always. If there's high performance, there's got to be rest, and the warm up is kind of the piece that joins them. Right? There's always the piece that connects things. That's really what I wanted to say on that, and I hope you're able to apply it somehow. One of the best ways to apply it is through rituals. If you can get a ritual into your day, at least once a day, maybe morning and evening if you can, and find something you enjoy doing that's got nothing to do with your main occupation or your main mission. If for no other reason, you can smuggle in the rest by doing that, but also it frees your mind to join dots and give you ideas as well. So I hope that helped, and until next time, all the best.